My name is Olivia Johnson, and I'm 36 years old. I have a husband who is 3 years older than me, and we have a son in elementary school. 5 years ago, my husband had an accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. He had to quit his job, which was really tough for him because he used to be the best salesman in his department. After the accident, he started getting angry with our son and me over small things. Sometimes he would only realize what he was doing when he saw our son crying. I learned to handle him better and told our son to stay away from his dad when I wasn't around. That helped to reduce the outbursts. Then I started working full-time to support our family. Even though I worked hard, I couldn't earn as much as my husband used to, so I took extra shifts whenever I could to make more money. It was tiring, but I thought I was doing it for my family. I didn't notice how much I was changing until a friend from high school pointed it out. She said I looked very different and much older than before. Her words hurt, but they were true. I used to care a lot about fashion and makeup, but now I focus on practical things and don't keep up with the latest trends. But even after realizing this, I don't have the luxury to enjoy fashion like I used to. Though I felt somewhat pessimistic, I reminded myself that this is only temporary. In a few weeks, our multi-generational home will be completed. The plan is for my family and my in-laws to live there. My in-laws suggested this to help lessen my load a bit. I felt bad about it, but I accepted their offer. My husband was also supportive of the idea. Since we decided on the multi-generational home, he's been in high spirits. He's usually quiet and hard to read, but lately he's been starting conversations with me and our son more often. Our son, not used to his dad talking to him, seems confused but also a bit happy. Before, my husband would yell at our son for reasons that didn't make sense, and our son became overly sensitive to his dad's mood. I had been struggling to improve their relationship, hoping that living in a duplex might help. But when our long-awaited duplex was finally completed, my husband told me he had something to discuss. He mentioned that my mother-in-law would also be present, and I had a bad feeling about it. Despite my apprehension, my husband began to speak with a smile on his face. "I can finally tell you, Olivia," he said. I was advised to keep silent until the duplex was finished, but I've been looking forward to this day. I was puzzled, not quite grasping what he was trying to convey. Then, with a casual tone, as if he were talking about today's weather, he said, "Olivia, let's get a divorce, and from now on, let's lead separate lives." It took me a few minutes to understand my husband's words. However, it seemed he took my silence as an agreement and triumphantly spread a divorce paper on the table. The document looked legitimate, with signatures from both him and my in-laws. Unable to accept the reality, I looked up, thinking it might be some kind of distasteful prank. But my husband's expression instantly crumbled that thought. I felt the determined resolve in his eyes, a promise to absolutely divorce me. Instinctively, I turned to my mother-in-law for support. But with an unreadable expression, she simply said, "Sign the paper." I felt betrayed. I thought things were going well with both my husband and my mother-in-law, but perhaps it was only me. Tears welled up as I bit my lower lip and looked down. Meanwhile, my husband continued to speak. "You could take our son, Olivia," he said. "He would be happier. Besides, with my health condition, it's impossible for me to take care of him." I cut him off. "Hold on. I never agreed to getting a divorce. You never said anything about this. You can't just decide all this on your own." I voiced my displeasure. During the brief silence, I asked, "First off, what do you plan to do without me? Do you realize how much I've supported you?" As soon as my husband heard these words, his expression changed. His face turned red, and he glared at me, yelling, "That's what I can't stand about you, your self-righteous way of talking. I didn't choose to be like this, yet you always look worn out, acting as if you're the only one suffering. I feel blamed every time. I'm fed up with you and your victim complex." I lost my words, hearing the true feelings of my husband. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. Seeing me crying, my husband looked annoyed and said, "See, you always play the victim, right, Mom?" You'd agree that a wife like her who can't even respect her husband isn't suitable for me, right? Don't worry, my new partner is young and beautiful, and I'm sure you'll like her. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Finally, I understood the real reason why my husband wanted a divorce. He was having an affair, and he was trying to get rid of me, the obstacle to be with his mistress. I never thought my husband would cheat on me, not because of his personality, but because I thought there was no chance for him to meet someone else. But I was wrong. He told me how he met his mistress. He met her online, and through texting each other every day, they developed feelings and fell in love. Learning about this whole online dating thing was bewildering for me. Looking back, my husband had been glued to his phone recently. Moreover, when he was engrossed in his phone, he seemed to be in an exceptionally good mood, oblivious to my husband's affair. I would think to myself, it's nice to see him in a good mood today. Yet, for all I knew, he may have been secretly inviting that woman over to our place when I wasn't around. Just the thought of it was enough to make my blood boil. Despite our arguments, I had never once considered leaving him before. But now, after hearing his true feelings, I just couldn't imagine being with him any longer, even if he took back his words and said, I don't want a divorce after all. I was now determined to leave him. As I made this decision, I heard a loud slap. Startled, I looked up to see my mother-in-law, her face twisted in an expression I had never seen before. My husband's cheek bore a red handprint. Realizing she had slapped him, I was taken aback. I would never have expected my mother-in-law to lay a hand on her son. She turned to me, deeply bowing her head in apology. I'm really sorry. I apologize for letting you take care of such a despicable son. As she uttered these words, her face a mask of profound regret, my mother-in-law said, Olivia, you're too good for my son. You've done so much for him, more than we could ever thank you for. My husband and I were looking forward to living with you too, but it seems you'll be better off without our son. She continued, we will make sure you receive proper alimony and child support, so please go ahead and divorce him. My husband, his face beet red, tried to retort, but a glare from his mother shut him up. A different kind of tears welled up at my mother-in-law's words. They brought both relief and sadness. Regardless of my husband, I was saddened at the prospect of ending my relationship with my in-laws. Encouraged by my mother-in-law, I filled out the divorce papers. And just like that, my husband and I became strangers. After parting with him, I returned to my parents' house with my son. They said it was fine to stay with them until things settled down, so I decided to take them up on their offer. I planned to continue working as before but discussed reducing my workload with my boss. I was considering changing jobs if needed, but my boss agreed to accommodate me without hesitation. To be honest, it took me by surprise. Apparently, my boss had been worried about my excessive workload for a while now. With a wry smile, he said, I was actually worried you might collapse one day, but knowing your situation at home, I didn't say anything. Feeling guilty, I bowed my head and apologized to my boss for causing him concern. He quickly shook his head, saying, No, it's just me worrying too much. But thinking about it, it's good that you left your ex-husband. His words brought a smile to my face, and I nodded in agreement. I'd also told my coworkers about my divorce. I thought it would be better to let everyone know since I was reducing my workload. I was anxious about their reaction, but when I honestly told them the reason for my divorce, they threw a party for me. I was taken aback by this, but it was a relief that the atmosphere didn't become serious. Although I had awful luck with men, I had the best colleagues at my workplace. By the time all the paperwork had settled, I took our son and left my parents' home. We chose a small apartment as our new home. It was a far cry from the spacious house we were supposed to be living in, but our son didn't show any discontent. Perhaps because he no longer had to worry about his father, he became more vocal about his opinions, and his demeanor brightened. It was a change that made me truly appreciate our separation from my ex-husband. The effects of the separation were apparent in me too. By the time I'd finished unpacking after the move, a friend came to visit and celebrate our new home. The last time we met, She was concerned about my well-being, but when she saw me today, she laughed and said that I look younger than ever. I couldn't help but laugh along. Everything started going smoothly, almost comically so, after the divorce. I suppose my old self was under so much stress, physically and mentally. Now I realized I was merely a maid for my ex-husband back then. I still can't forgive my ex-husband, and I don't want to see him, but I do meet my in-laws once a month now. A while ago, my son got a fever, but I absolutely couldn't take a day off of work that day. And to make matters worse, my parents weren't available either. Out of desperation, I reached out to my in-laws. They immediately came over to take care of my son. We used to barely communicate due to the situation with my ex-husband. But since that day, we make sure to meet at least once a month. They thanked me for letting them see their grandson, but I was grateful that they still loved my son even after the divorce. My son occasionally mentioned his grandparents, but he never said he wanted to see them, perhaps out of consideration for me. However, he did ask how they were doing. After all, they were his beloved grandparents. To be honest, I didn't want to take his grandparents away from him, so it was a relief to know they wanted to see him too. By the way, my son never once mentioned my ex-husband. Even my in-laws knew that we didn't want to see him. However, my ex-husband had a different idea. I was utterly surprised when I heard from my mother-in-law that my ex-husband was considering getting back with us. I thought that things were going well with his mistress. According to my mother-in-law, the mistress moved in shortly after we left. It seemed like they had it all planned out. The mistress was delighted to see the new house and moved in without even getting permission from my in-laws. They were taken aback, but decided to act as if my ex-husband and his new partner didn't exist. At first, the mistress seemed pleased with the minimal interaction with my in-laws, but soon she started showing signs of discontent. Apparently, she thought that my in-laws would be helping with the household chores. She complained about it to my ex-husband. He then said to his parents, "What's this all about? Didn't you promise to help with the housework?" To this, my mother-in-law replied, "We did promise, but that was with Olivia, not with you two." And she ignored anything he said after that. Left with no choice, my ex-husband tried to get the mistress to do everything that I used to do. At first, she reluctantly did as told, but every complaint from my ex-husband caused more strain between them. Eventually, his mistress had enough and left the house, slamming the divorce papers at my ex-husband. I thought to myself, my ex is pretty bad, but that mistress is quite something too. My mother-in-law, with a bitter smile, commented that my ex-husband's behavior afterwards was the real problem. He refused to admit that he was at fault and blamed his mistress for getting dumped by saying that he got tricked by her. Furthermore, there was no one left to take care of my ex now that his mistress was gone. He couldn't rely on my in-laws either. As a result, for some reason, he thought that if we reconciled, everything would return to how it was. He probably has forgotten the things he did. He told my in-laws that he wanted to get back together with me and asked for their help. When I heard about this, I couldn't help but shudder at the thought of living with my ex again. My mother-in-law quickly reassured me, saying, "Don't worry, we firmly refused." My ex, scolded by my in-laws, gave up on seeing me but now wanted to see our son. My in-laws also refused this. Finally, my in-laws told my ex that if he caused any more trouble to me or our son, they would sever family ties and kick him out. This finally made him give up. It would be difficult for my ex, who was well received by his neighbors and friends, to live relying on others besides his family. I'm glad that my in-laws are not on my ex's side. From now on, I plan to make good use of my past experiences and do my best without pushing myself too hard. I'd also want to cherish the time with my son and make lots of